Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished and senior professional from Northern California, USA, Karrie Mitten. Karrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ash, for having me.
Thank you. Karrie is an empowerment coach, a work-life strategist for high-performing entrepreneurs. She's also an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled The Sacred Dance and Short, Sweet, and Sacred, Volume 2. So, Karrie, before we talk about your journey as a coach, tell me about your own journey that led you to become a transformational life coach.
Well, thank you for asking. I tell everyone that I have been a coach my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I think I came out of the womb coaching people and uplifting and inspiring people. But it really started when I was about 16 or 17 years old. I was sitting at the dinner table with my family. I was getting ready to apply for colleges, and my dad asked me a very poignant question. And he said, "Karrie, what do you want to do when you grow up?" Right. And at that point, I was kind of irritated with him because I thought at 16 years old, I was grown up. But I told him, I said, I'm really not sure what I want to do. I would love to help people in some way. And I'm very creative. So use my creative energies for that. But I don't know what that looks like. And so we had a conversation, and finally he said, well, maybe it's some type of nonprofit work. And I said, well, maybe. And he paused right there. And in that moment, out of protection for me, he said, well, you won't make a lot of money doing that. And my subconscious mind decided at that moment that my dream didn't matter. So I went into the corporate world. I went into sales and marketing, which is what he told me to do, right? And it was a very, very successful, corporate career from the outside. On the inside, it wasn't fulfilling my dream. And so I found myself, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole many times, redefining myself in the corporate world. And again, I had success, but I was not going after my dream. And so finally, a friend of mine asked me if I would join her in a staffing agency and potentially buy her out over time. And I followed the shiny bouncy ball. There was quite a lot of income in the staffing agency. And I've quickly, about a year into it, recognized that was not what I wanted to do with my life. Once again, found myself, in a position where I wasn't going after my dream. And there was a defining moment where I sat across the table at a deposition for a woman who was suing us for workman's comp claim. And she told lie after lie about me, about my company, about her alleged injury. And I had a download at that moment that this was this was universe, God, spirit telling me that I needed to go after my dream.
Amazing.
And I walked away from corporate America at that moment. And when I got back to the office, I didn't know what that was going to look like, what my life was going to look like after that. It was a lot of fear involved, but I knew that great things happen with fear. That courage is doing it with fear. And so I sought out a life coach myself. I had done some therapy throughout my years, and that wasn't really for me. And so I needed somebody to help me, guide me along the way, to put me in a structure of support and see the things that I wasn't seeing. And got myself a life coach. And shortly after that, her and I were talking, and she said, this is what you're made to do. You were born to do this, Karrie. And so I got my certifications, and my business was birthed.
Amazing. And as the rest is history, right?
And the rest is history. That's
fantastic.
Right. That's
Wonderful.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about your new avatar as an empowerment coach. What are some of the key elements of your coaching programs, and how do you tailor them to individual needs?
So what I do as an empowerment coach is I really help people to understand who they are on a very spiritual level. I share that we are spiritual beings having a human experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that in the NLP world, which is neuro-linguistic programming, the other thing that we learn is that we have a spiritual body, a physical body, a mental body, and an
Mm-hmm.
emotional body. Or
Right.
excuse me, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to really get the first body correct. I mean, not correct, but in alignment, and understand that
Mm.
before we can take care of the rest, because there's a trickle down factor.
Right.
So I help people wherever they are, no matter
Mm.
where they are in life, or their spirituality, their belief system. I meet everybody where they are, but I help them to understand that the power that they have is in that connection
Mm.
with themselves and inside themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and really, help them to hone in on that, and develop that relationship.
Mm.
Um, and to make it specific to each person, it really depends on the area that they're working in. We all carry baggage. We all have
Yeah.
baggage from
Mm-hmm.
past experiences, belief systems, things like that.
Yeah.
So the very first thing that I do with all my clients is I help them to release that baggage
Mm-hmm.
with hypnotherapy, with neuro-linguistic programming, and mental
Mm.
and emotional release.
Very interesting.
That helps them to see life more clearly, not through the lens of the baggage that they've been
Mm.
carrying around for so
Mm.
long. Yeah.
And based on the work that you do with so many different clients,
Mhm.
what are some of the common challenges you address with them?
Yeah, so I do work with both men and women, but
Mhm.
primarily with women. The men are, I find one of the things that they come to me for is relationships. They can't,
Mhm.
they seem to not be able to find a long-term relationship.
Mm.
Women are more esoteric, I should say.
Mhm.
They're looking for confidence, or feeling good in their own skin,
Mm.
doing having walking into a room and feeling like they're not just part of the wallpaper, right?
Mm.
That they're recognizable, and that they're valid.
Mm.
I work with a lot of women who are in some type of life transition. Maybe they've just been recently divorced, or they lost a loved one, or they are, looking for retirement, or empty nest, or they just know that there's something more for
Mm.
them in their
Mm.
life,
Mm.
right? And so that's really how I who I work with and how I work with them,
Very
is
interesting.
really how I work with them. It's not a one size fits all.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you also spoke a little bit about hypnotherapy in one of your
Mhm.
earlier responses. Tell me a little bit more about the power of hypnotherapy in coaching, and how do
Mhm.
you help individuals overcome their negative emotions?
Yes. Yes. Beautiful question. So I'm a firm proponent to working with a subconscious mind, right?
Mhm.
We have the conscious mind, which is the
Mhm.
gatekeeper, I call it. And then the subconscious mind is where all learning, behavior, and change happens.
Mhm.
And hypnotherapy is really just about putting yourself in a very deep, relaxed space. You're not asleep. You're not unconscious. You're very conscious, or very aware, I should say.
Mhm.
Um, and and it what we do is we help to we do it well to eliminate the baggage, I guess, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
is we do a program called a breakthrough,
Mhm.
and it's all based on the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind doesn't understand what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. It only understands and processes what the conscious mind tells it.
Mhm.
And so we kind of through the breakthrough session with a little neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy, we kind of confuse the conscious mind so that we can get
Mhm.
past it, so that we can work in the subconscious layer. And after the hypnotherapy sessions or the breakthrough sessions, my clients feel release, they feel lighter, they feel they still have the memory maybe of some of the experiences that they had, but they don't have the electricity or the charge around it. So it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful process.
Fascinating. I must learn a little more about hypnotherapy.
Yes.
Karrie, tell me, you also spoke about neuro-linguistic programming. What is the role of NLP in your coaching practice?
Yes. So NLP is really the language of the subconscious mind and how our mind thinks and processes. And so I've just become a master practitioner in NLP so that I can help my clients understand what it is that they really want. We say things sometimes, our mouth says something, but our mind is thinking something else. And so how I use that in my coaching is I help get down to the layers, to uncover some things that maybe they weren't even really aware of. And they're saying things, but really underneath it all, what is the context around the content, right? What is really going on here, so that I can help them to uncover that and let go of some of the things that are no longer serving them. So that's how I use it in my coaching
Great
program.
response. And what role does emotional release play in a personal transformation?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you can't have transformation and stay the same person that you are. Transformation is the act of moving from one form to another, right? And so in order to have transformation, you have to be willing to let go of some of the things that no longer serve you so that you can become the person that you're growing into, right? And so mental and emotional release is letting go of some of that stuff, that the patterns of things that you've been stuck in, or that just no longer serve you. I had a client that, she said, why do I constantly pick men who are narcissistic? She was actually getting ready to divorce her third husband.
Right.
And I said, the reason that you are continuing to choose this type of person is because you haven't gotten the lesson. Right? Every person that comes into our life is here to teach us a lesson. So, and you are in a pattern that this is all that you know. And so let's break that pattern, that cycle, and let's get the learning from it, right? Be curious about the learning from it so that you no longer make these choices, that you're making choices that are based on a better, a more life-giving decision rather than a life-sucking decision, right?
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. My next question is that, can you help me understand the concept of living one's soul's purpose?
Yes. I'm going to start by sharing with you a poem by the great 13th century poet Rumi. And he said, it's as if you have come into a kingdom where you only have one thing to do. You could do 100 things or 1,000 things, but if you don't do the one thing that you have done, that you have come to do, it's as if you've done nothing. And I believe that one thing is your soul's purpose. It is to become a bigger, more expansive expression of you. And when we truly understand that and continue to grow, and there's so many intricacies involved in that, Ash, that I wish we had an hour to share, but it's truly about understanding that you are here, you've been put on this earth for a specific reason, and that reason you will find that purpose by growing yourself, by continuing to develop yourself, not staying stuck in the default patterns of your life, but continuing to improve, to grow, explore, make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, all of that, because we're not put on this earth to stay the same, to stay
Right.
stuck. And as you're growing and as you're evolving, you're going to find the thing that you were called to do. Right. And so that's why, and that is your soul's purpose, is when you truly lean into that and you truly listen to that still small voice inside of you, and you take the steps that are required. And again, there's a lot to that, but you will find your soul's purpose.
Amazing. And soul's purpose, of course, has also been talked a lot about scriptures in India. But that is for another discussion some other time.
Yes.
My next question to you is that, based on the amazing understanding you have about human beings and all the work that you've done, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to feel confident in their life?
So Napoleon Hill, he was the author of Think and Grow Rich, which is one of the most widely publicized books in all of humanity, I think. He said in his book, the most successful people begin with the end in mind. And so when I start working with my clients, one of the first things that I do after we get the release work done, so that they can now see the clear picture, right, is we create a vision statement. And in that vision statement, I ask them to really write down and ask the question, what would you love? What would you love to have, do, give, be, create in all areas of your life? And what this does is it gives you a focal point. It gives you a North Star to work with, right? And then there's a process that we go through that I help them to kind of, figure out the path to get there by really putting that energy on of the man or the woman in that vision. Act as if you're already there. You've already had the success. You've already done the things, right? And then that starts to lift their confidence, boost their energy, right? And then we start taking the action steps to manifest that vision. And anytime that you, and we celebrate everything along the way, everything, I tell my clients, small hinges swing big doors, right? So let's celebrate the fact that you're showing up here. Let's celebrate the fact that you said yes to you. And every time we celebrate, their spine grows a little taller, right? Their top of their head gets a little bit higher. I mean, they walk with a different gait, and they start to have that upward trajectory of confidence, right? And it's a beautiful journey. I'm very humbled to be on the journey with my clients and see that, because I can literally see it in their physicality. Their whole physical posture changes when they start to grow that.
Wow,
and work with
what
that.
a great response. What a great response. Thank you. My next question is to you personally. How has your background from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur to now being a coach, how has your background supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Great question. I'm a firm believer in the fact that everything happens to you or to me as a learning opportunity. Everything is a learning opportunity. Correct. And so, I have learned so much in the years that I was in corporate, the years that I was an entrepreneur. I still am an entrepreneur as a coach. I tell my clients, you can either use your experiences to shake you or shape you. And I decide to allow my experiences to shape me. I don't look at anything and say, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Because I did that at the level of awareness that I had at the time. And so through my years of working with people and really, in sales and in marketing, I really listened to people. And I became a really great listener. And so that helps me in my coaching business and as a coach and personally, just to be more aware, to be more present.
Mhm.
And if I can do that and hold that space for my clients, then that energy starts to infiltrate everything, and they start to recognize that, hey, being present is one of the most powerful things that you can do.
Very
And
well
so,
said.
so I just, I've learned so much from everything that's happened to me in my life, and I use that as best as I can. Yeah.
Fascinating. And my last question, Karrie, for you, and this is, I want to come to your books. You're an author of 2 books, The Sacred Dance and Short, Sweet, and Sacred, Volume 2. Before I ask you a question, I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Karrie Mitten's books on Amazon and any other platform that you use. I will go and check them myself. So, Karrie, tell me about both these books, and what was your inspiration and your hypothesis when you wrote these books?
Well, first of all, I have to share that I'm a co-author in these books.
Okay.
And so in The Sacred Dance, I tell my story of how I became a coach. I go into a little bit more detail. But that book is so beautiful because there's a story after story after story of how people have overcome heartache, overcome, misery or illness or things like that. And we all, what I recognize from that book is it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what, creed, color, religion, orientation, any of that. We all have things in our life, and we all place a value on what that does in our life. We all have experiences that some, by world speak, is tragic. I mean, horrific things. And then somebody else could have something, and their experience was horrific, and you can't compare the two. But the beauty of it is that in that book, I think there's everything, every imaginable, experience happen, and yet every single person in that book overcame that and used it all for good.
Amazing.
And it's really beautiful to see and experience, and you will resonate absolutely with all of the stories, because we all have our story like that.
Thank you.
In the Sweet and Sacred Volume 2, it's more about how I manifested my dream life. And how I use the tools and principles that I teach my clients, how I manifested a dream home in 2,400. We bought a house in Michigan. It's 2,400 miles away from my home here in California. We started with absolutely no additional income. And I used the tools and principles that I share with my clients, and I manifested our dream vacation home.
Amazing.
And so, I'm proof positive that this works. And it's not about the house. Yes, we love it. We go there often, but it's more about who I had to become in the process of manifesting that dream vacation home. So,
wonderful.
Yes.
Karrie, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of coaching, about hypnotherapy, about NLP, about soul's purpose, which I thought was fascinating because I was able to relate back to a lot of our own scriptures in India. Thank you also for speaking to me about how we can help someone who's struggling to feel confident. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.